This is the worst foreign policy blunder in the Pacific that Australia has seen since the end of World War II.
The blunder? Failing to stop a secret deal between China and the Solomon Islands. The deal? A security agreement it's feared could pave the way for a Chinese military base just 1,600 kilometres off our coastline. That's closer to Cairns than Canberra is.
This is a clear first step. And the terms of the agreement allowed China to insert security people, to have port visits from its Navy ships and to replenish. Why would that even be there if China didn't have that objective?
We entered into an arrangement with China with our eyes wide open, guided by our national interests.
The relationship has been a worry for a while. Back in 2016, the Solomons signed a deal with China's Huawei for an internet cable, forcing our government to step in.
We've invested in the undersea cable project to ensure the security of their communications networks.
Then, in 2019, Honiara officially broke off a 36-year relationship with Taiwan and took up with Beijing instead.
The emphasis in China's relationship in the South Pacific is no longer the Taiwan issue. It's about limiting United States influence and limiting Australian influence and extending its strategic reach.
Last November, locals rioted over China's growing influence. Australia sent in peacekeeping troops, but China sent police and equipment too.
This is a very bad day for Australia. This is a failure of Australian policy. China has outplayed Australia, New Zealand and the United States.
A draft version of this deal came to light last month, but efforts to scuttle it clearly haven't worked.
The Australian government was warned that this was in the offing. Well, we've seen it's come to fruition as a consequence of him going missing.
The risk of China seeking to interfere within our region I have known about and have been taking strong action about. One of the things you don't do in the Pacific is you don't throw your weight around.
Well, Senator Zed Seselja is the Minister for the Pacific. He joins us now. And, Minister, Australia seems to have long ignored Pacific concerns, especially around climate change. So isn't this the invoice for that?
Well, look, no, and I disagree that we have in any way ignored Pacific concerns, whether it's on climate change, whether it's on security, whether it's on development in the space. Under our government, we have increased significantly our assistance to the Pacific. That is a fact, from around $1.1 billion a year when we came to office to this year around $1.85 billion, and that doesn't include some of our security assistance, whether that's things like Guardian-class patrol boats. It doesn't include the millions of vaccine doses that we've delivered during the vaccine. And when it comes to climate change, we have promised up to $700 million, at least $700 million in climate finance over the next few years, which is a record. We've responded to those concerns. So, no, I don't accept that at all. The Australian government is doing a record amount. Of course, we're very concerned about this decision that has been made by the Solomon Islands government, and we've expressed those concerns directly. We've expressed those concerns in discussions with other Pacific leaders in our region. We'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to have that dialogue to make sure that Australia's interests are taken account of, but we'll do it respecting the sovereignty of the Solomon Islands.
Well, just about everyone, including your own former Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, has questioned why you went to the Solomons last week and not Foreign Minister Marise Payne. What are your thoughts on that? What we've seen is engagement across the board. So Marise Payne has obviously been in touch with her counterpart, the Foreign Minister. Our Prime Minister has been in touch with Prime Minister Sogavare. We've had senior officials visiting the Solomons on a number of occasions. I visited as well. So the idea that there hasn't been really significant engagement is false. The narrative that the Labor Party has put out there today has been false on every level. They claimed we've had cuts when we've had significantly more support for the Solomon Islands than when they were in government. They claimed we knew about this last year. That's not true. There's no evidence for that. We became aware of it when it was leaked a little while ago. And they've claimed that climate change is the issue when this is an agreement between the Solomon Islands and China, the largest emitter in the world. So that simply does not add up. So we'll take some of that political commentary, but what is important is that we continue to engage respectfully. The Solomon Islands have said very clearly that Australia will remain the preeminent security partner, and that is as it should be, because we've demonstrated in recent times
most recently late last year, that when the Solomon Islands was in trouble, within 12 hours, we had our AFP and our ADF on the ground restoring order in Honiara.
But as we pointed out in that story, China also sent resources at that moment too. So I guess we're in a kind of competition here. And I wonder if, looking at this from the Solomon Islands perspective, this just makes perfect sense. That they're an impoverished nation. And if this is a way in which they can shore up their economic and financial security, then they'll do it. Are you ultimately just being outbid or outbustled by China and therefore really have no answer?
Well, look, I wouldn't put it like that, and certainly what the Solomon Islands government believes, I guess, is a matter for them to say. What I would say, though, is when it comes to taking care of the needs of Solomon Islanders and in partnership with the Solomon Islands government, no one has done more than Australia. We are by far the biggest development partner by a long way.
But for all that, they've thrown their lot in with China on in this instance in a way that really annoys you. And annoys, I think, most Australians who watch this area. So they've made a decision that seems to make sense for them, right? Do you at least concede that?
Well, look, I mean, I'll leave you to, I suppose, make that kind of commentary. What I would say is, yes, I mean, I'm not happy with the decision, and I've made that clear, and the government has made that clear. But the way to respond to it is certainly not, I think, to seek to badger or lecture, because they are a sovereign nation. And so us seeking to tell them what to do would not be appropriate, nor would it be productive. But what we can do and what we are doing is not only engaging with the Solomon Islands government, but engaging across the region, as I've been doing quite a bit, and I've had direct discussions with a number of Pacific Island leaders, and they have significant concerns. The Pacific way has been that we come together and we discuss these things, and that would be our hope going forward at the Pacific Island Forum. That is the way to deal with it, but as well as continuing to make sure that our efforts in the region are as significant as they have been, which is at record levels. But Waleed, I'm not going to pretend that there isn't serious geostrategic competition here. The question is how you respond to it, and we are responding at every possible level. But, you've pointed out some of the problems. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and whether we have what it takes to win that. Senator, I guess we'll find out. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.